I got a little presentation. I pulled out some of my stuff from Instagram that I thought I'd talk about and kind of go over some of the do's and don'ts and stuff, and mostly the do's. Top splines are, in my experience, real can be real heartbreaker things to take on for a couple of reasons. One, it's in the middle of the thing that everybody looks at, which is the top, like, and like there's a lot of expectations in the guitar world that we're geniuses or whatever. And, everybody's a master craftsman or whatever, but slipping a little piece of spruce into a tiny crack is really, really challenging in my experience. And the other thing too is from a touch-up perspective, bare spruce has it all in spades, which is it's very light. In a couple previous episodes, we've talked about kind of degree of difficulty. And for me, like, degree of difficulty is darker is easier than lighter most of the time. And then less chatoyant is easier than high chatoyant most of the time. And that's because with that chatoyancy, when when you're rolling it around, you're getting several different colors because you're looking into different areas of the fiber pattern and getting different angles from the light. So you're getting like all of these different colors. So if you were to take one species of spruce and put it into or even like a different run out pattern and put it into a top, the idea that you're going to go in and make bare spruce look like a different piece of bare spruce with stuff that doesn't change, like pigment doesn't change as you roll it around in the light, and dye does not change much when you roll it around in the light. The idea being that you could actually, like, I could take a spruce top and put a blank piece of maple in there and fairly convincingly in one angle, paint a nice grain line, paint some medullary rays that are halfway convincing. I could, in one angle, make something that looks remarkably compelling. As soon as I move that into a different angle, the jig is up, and something can go from remarkably close, near invisible, to something that looks like clown shoes from 20 feet away. It's just almost impossible to do it, and paint away. So a lot of what we're going to talk, we'll get into this in a little bit, but we'll talk about like when, what we're trying to do with this stuff. And for me, splining is a technique that comes up because I've had, I don't like customers coming back, and I don't like gluing up a crack and then like having a customer I know dried the guitar out. Like, I can look at the guitar and I can tell that they dried it out. And then I got to have this conversation with them about like, oh, well, you dried your guitar out. Oh, I had a thing in the case the whole time. And I'm like, well, did you check? Just on and on and on and on and on. So for me, splining is about reduced conversations with customers. But that being said, they got to look kind of good. They got to fit. They got to, like, a poorly fit spline will fail just as much as a crack that gets dried again. So, all right. So let's start this presentation and talk about this. Before we get going, does anybody have any questions? I think that was my 5-hour energy talk in there. I think it's finally kicking in. So let's see here. So how are we looking, Ted?
Looks great.
All right. So splining, tough business. So don't watch this video and think that you just watched a YouTube video that's gonna, let you, put an outlet cover on your outlet. This is hard stuff. At least for me personally. Uh, I don't I don't go into any spline without a serious amount of trepidation, and I would just like, you know, do try this at home. I'm not saying don't try this at home. What I'm saying is practice, practice, practice. I'm going to set up, we're going to go through setting up boards to where you can just break them and re-glue them, and you can just practice and practice and practice. And until you get something, on the practice board reliably where you get like a nice tight fit, minimal glue line, just be very hesitant to try to take this into the real world on a customer's guitar. Okay. Everybody clear on that? Okay. So let's see here. Oh, my keyboard shortcut's not working. Okay. So window spline. This is an area of contention in the guitar repair community. Some people will do just about anything to avoid splining, and for reasons that I just went over, which is it's tough business. They can look terrible. On vintage guitars, it's unoriginal, all of the above. Like, they're not to go into lightly. So I'm not a big fan of bagging guitars. Some people will put the damp paper towels in the bottom of the garbage bag and then bag the guitar up and then swell stuff shut. And then, like, right before it closes, they'll, glue it up. In my experience, like, if those guitars are not babied, like really babied humidity wise, they open back up. There are a lot of reasons why guitars crack. Sometimes it's dryness, but in my experience, I mean, I've worked for a major guitar manufacturer. I've heard scuttlebutt about other guitar manufacturers and how they cure their wet wood out. A lot of times guitars are cracking because the wood is like rush cured. A lot of times guitars will crack. You think it's because they're dry or whatever, but if I want you to think about, like, if you're building a guitar and you can cram some sides into some wood and then put the top on it and get the top to hold those sides in place. You're cramming them in, you're getting them maybe, bent roughly, but a dreadnought doesn't require a lot of strength to get it into the mold with less bending action. And those guitars are basically like held together with the top, and those sides are pushing out. Like, it doesn't take much to imagine that those sides are pulling those tops apart. We see that a lot in that's kind of what happens in the violin world too. The violin world, the top cracks and they'll take the top plate right off. They don't care. They got no binding to worry about. They'll take that top plate right off, glue it back up, and then glue it back on, to the side, to the ribs, without all that tension on the top from the ribs anymore. We don't get to do that. So something has happened to where you've got that crack in there. And I mean, I've seen a lot of old guitars that didn't crack. And I'm just saying that, I don't have a lot of science for this stuff. But I know that, there's a lot of guitars that have lived, close to 100 years now that have that are crack free, and you can't tell me that they've been at 45% humidity their entire lives. Something else is causing these cracks other than getting dry. Although getting dry, well, it does help. So anyway, window spline. I spline quite a bit when it's the only way you're going to have a previous attempt look better. This is a picture of a guitar that came to me. It has dirt in it. It's got failed glue attempts. It's probably got several failed glue attempts. By the time I clean all of that nonsense out, there's going to be a void there. I mean, just pure and simple. This is a good example of when I spline a guitar. So The other one, repeat offenders. So if the other thing too is you get one shot with tight bond. If tight bond fails, you're not gonna slop more tight bond in there and stand any chance of it staying. Hide glue, you get second and third attempts. If you're so inclined. Personally, I think hide glued cracks look a little, I mean, unless you got like ultra refined hide glue, they tend to look a little dark for my taste, but what else. But repeat offenders, crack reopens with minimal humidity change. I'm not a super high humidity guy. You know, the kind of the folkloric humidity standard for us is 45%. I think that's been kind of foisted onto us by manufacturers who once again want to make excuses for their shady curing practices. But I personally I don't like the sound of wet guitars, and 45% to me is a little is getting on the damp side. In my shop, I personally I don't get worried about guitars cracking until right around 30, below 30, and I'm starting to wonder, what's going on in my shop, why my humidifier isn't working or whatever. But down to 30, I'm fine. And if a guitar is going to crack at 30, I mean, it's going to see 30. Somebody's going to let it slip. Somebody's going to have, forget to check their little moisture pack in their guitar or something. They're going to see 30. And it's tough to tell customers, that, oh, this is your fault. I mean, it can be done. Certainly it can be done. But anyway, so if a guitar is a repeat offender, I tend to spline because, I tight bond them shut. And if it fails, then I got to clean that tight bond out, and then it's too big to tight bond shut again, almost all of the time. Dirt in the crack, once again, nothing's, if somebody's let a crack go and they're polishing and polishing and polishing, and they got polish down in the crack and they got dirt down in the crack, you've got to, those cracks act like sponges, and all that crap is going in deeper than you imagine. And if you just do a cursory clean out, then chances are pretty good that it's going to open back up again, in my experience. Gigunda cracks, I mean, big cracks. I mean, you can force them shut with a bag and damp paper towels, but if a guitar got down to 30 and it's got a 32nd of an inch wide crack in it, the amount that you have to force that back shut is it's probably not going to work. I mean, give it the college try. I mean, don't be surprised if it fails again. Forcing back together a crack that's too big is probably going to fail again. And the other one is failed cleats. And this is another one of the reasons why I kind of, even though they're tough, I like to spline. I've seen a lot of failed cleats, and the cleats weren't broken. What had happened is the cleats were together on the bottom and the top was apart, and the crack had done one of these kind of things, where it was closed on the bottom and open on the top. I've seen that probably 15 to 20 times. Beautifully cleated cracks. I'm sure when that guitar left the first round, it was probably a beautifully repaired crack. But the guitar, in my mind, one of the main reasons why I spline is the guitar has decided it wants to be in that position. That's where it wants to be. It's in its relaxed state with that crack in there, whatever it is, whether it's the sides are pulling out, or the bridge is doing something, or the braces are doing something, or whatever it is that's caused it, that's its relaxed state. You know, you got to kind of like on a lot of these repairs, I feel like meeting the guitar halfway for where it decides its neutral position is kind of more my cup of tea. I'm not big into like, you know, like, you know, heat pressing tops or stuff like that to pull stuff out. I just figure the guitar figured out how to get into that position. You heat bend a top back in, you know, shape, you know, maybe every once in a while or whatever. That makes sense. But I just feel like a lot of these times these guitars are gonna, because of the forces that are on them, they're gonna find their way back to that kind of lowest common denominator position that they find themselves in. So feel free to disagree with this. Once again, this is experience. This isn't science. I'm not speaking about any of this as though it's the gospel truth. It's just, it's what I've seen. Here's an example of an L5. It's got everything. It's a big crack. It was filled. It got dirty. It was, you know, it was time to put something in there to pick up the slack. It's puckered. So you can see this pucker here, like it's something's moving around there. So anyway, this is how I go about splines. And this is, once again, this is not to be taken as the gospel truth. I don't think anybody's written the definitive book on it, but this is kind of after a lot of trial and error. My techniques haven't changed a lot in the last few years, but they certainly did. You know, I've tried everything. I've tried that Ibex cleat, you know, system. I've tried, you know, cleating with a V. I've tried cleating, you know, regular. I've tried using a knife to open it up a little bit more. I've tried little cleats. I've tried big cleats. I've tried tight bond. I've tried hide glue. I've tried epoxy. I've tried a lot. And this is where I'm at. It hasn't changed. I'm not saying it won't change, but this is where I'm at right now. Any questions so far?
Hey, Ian.
Yes.
Have you ever tried the TJ Thompson cleats, the super long, thin, that run like the whole length of the crack?
I haven't, but I mean, I don't want to bag on other people's stuff too much, but just instinctually, for the reason why I was saying before, which is I've seen cracks fail like this before. I feel like they're big and they're tough. I would feel like it would be tough to explain to a customer why I put that much extra spruce on the inside of their guitar. I think in certain circumstances, like under a fingerboard extension where there wasn't, you know, where there wasn't a popsicle brace or something like that, and you're trying to shore things up in there, like I think it's super appropriate. But like for, you know, but that's, once again, I mean, TJ's a good luth, you know, Mark Stutman's a good luth. I have a hard time, you know, bagging on their procedures just kind of willy-nilly like that. But it would be hard for me to put those in, I feel like. Anyway. So, and I know that, you know, I mean, I can see why, like, they would say probably the same thing about what I'm up to, which is it's hard to put a top spline in and explain it to your customer why they got a big extra piece of wood running down their top. We're doing everything we can to avoid that. You know, I get the argument either way. I don't think they're, you know, like on a lot of these things, I don't think there are any like perfect answers for these things. So I just know that if I put those cleats in, then all of a sudden it did that failure that I'm talking about, where it opens on the top and stays shut on the bottom. boy, pulling all that stuff back out again would be a real drag, like a real drag. So anyway, but whatever. What's your instinct on that, Tyler? Have you tried them at all?
I never have, but it always struck me as, yeah, like you said, a little bit overbuilt.
Yeah, I I like I will say I've seen some of TJ's work that is on the over I've seen some of his bridge plates that were big, and I like him. Like I like his, he's at the top of the food chain, and he's not afraid to make decisions on guitars that are going against the unofficial Martin Guitar Forum, and they're kind of my bridge plate is an original kind of stuff. Like I like his stuff. So you know, I I'm just it's just not for me. So anyway, how I go about it. So with everything, smaller is bigger than better in my book. If I've got a crack, and I mean I've gone down to 10 thousandths on a top spline before. Um, at some point, I think that was probably mostly just showing off that I could do it. It was very, at 10 thousandths, it's very difficult to detect. It's basically a plane shaving. Um, at some point, maybe you ought to just glue the crack, but down to 15 thousandths, yes. Like I go pretty small with my top splines, and 15 thousandths is it's a good, I believe that's a good starting point for a lot of these, especially if you've cleaned out to 15 thousandths. Um, in general, people have a memory. Everybody's got a picture in their phone of their guitar. And so if somebody brings you in something that's a crack, and oh my God, it went from a 64th of an inch out to a quarter of an inch, people are going to notice that. Like if you hand somebody back something that's a spline that's relatively the same size as the crack, plus or minus a little bit for clean out and stuff, you've got a lot of plausible deniability for not having made things worse. Like keep in general, smaller touch-ups, smaller repairs, all of this stuff is bigger than bigger repairs. So I fit the spline to the smallest possible opening. And a lot of times, as you can see on here, that's going to mean that the crack is going to wave with the wave of the grain line. And so this piece right here is going down a wavy section, and you can see that it's like 3 times the size of the crack. And that's because I'm aiming to throw early wood down that early wood section. I don't want to have even if I could just like take a strip of it off and then, cram it in there, at roughly the same thickness, it's not going to look as good. Maybe I'll have like a weird section of grain line come in. So that's actually what it takes. That overage there. I don't know if you can see this here, but this is quite a bit thicker than that. Fitting that wave in there is it takes kind of a little bit of sensitivity, and then having a large enough piece to where you can fit it to that wave. Well, I feel like I over-explained that. So anyway, we see that it's an oversized piece and it's fit to the run of the crack. I didn't put this in here, but the other thing too is take those bridges off. Don't think that you're gonna like get a spline right up to the end of the bridge and then finish around it. It's such a pain in the butt. Just take the bridge off, run your spline under the bridge. You'll be happy you did. I mean, it's a bridge reglue, but I mean, it's worth doing. So the first step of this is going to be prepping. I do almost all my prep, my clean out with sandpaper. Boy, knives are dangerous. All it does is take catching a grain line and stuff, and you're going. I've had terrible luck with knives. So this is one where this one's getting big, and so I need, I want it to be pretty square too. So I've got my sandpaper, sticky sandpaper on a razor blade, and then that's what's cleaning it out. Um, I do just like have a, you know, piece of sandpaper, and I'll reach in and grab the other side and go back and forth. Um, I've done that before. But yeah, mostly sandpaper, and really trying to square up that crack. Trying to square it up without enlarging it too. Sometimes you got to enlarge it a little bit. If you've got a crack with a grain line that's, where it broke like this, you're going to have to take off some of that. You're probably going to have to take some off of this too, to get like a nice square opening where you're not fitting your spline in sideways. But so this is how I normally clean out, like if it's a previous attempt. Any questions on this? So this was one where I had a previous attempt that it had to be undone, and the only way to do that really was to saw through it. And so these little blitz saws go down into pretty small thicknesses, and they can work really well for that. Once again, got to be careful. I've cleaned out, I've rebroken bad glue joints with nut files before too. I'm trying to think what else I've used. Real hesitant to do any of this with a knife, even a sharp X-Acto knife. Like it can just wander off path too easy, I feel. So fit in the spline. So here was an arch top that I did. Ted asked me about this one. Basically, I put the arch in it. I do that a little bit. Almost all modern flat tops are actually arched in some way. So before you start fitting it down the crack, you're going to want to fit it to the arch of the top, or you're going to be hosed. So this fitting, we're going to go through this when we get our dummy boards or our practice boards made up. But basically, I start on one end and I start sanding off, and I just fit it all the way down until I'm at the end, and then I put it in. This right here is 85%, and I'm not making that number up. This is a factual number. 85% of how well regarded your top spline will be. Small glue joints better than large glue joints. Tight fitting things with mediocre touch up always look better than shabbily fit things with excellent touch up. It's just the way it is. Don't think that you're gonna do kind of a half-assed job fitting it and then come back and take it out and post with your paint brushes. It's some tiny painting to try to paint a bad grain line away. This is also the time to really take things slow. I don't know if you could tell, but I wasn't born with an abundance of patience. And I'll tell you what, you want to see me have an emotional meltdown, wait till I'm at like the end of hour 2 of fitting a spline, and then it breaks because I rushed putting it back over onto the glass flat block to do one last little bit of sanding. And let me tell you something, a 15 thousandths thickness spline, it takes about the force of a mouse fart to break, and it'll really make you angry. Get you a good pair of tweezers too. Tweezers are nice for taking the, if you're going to be putting it in, pulling it out, doing a lot of this stuff with something very small. a good pair of tweezers is a really excellent idea. I've lost my good pair, so I'll probably get one if a spline comes up again. So here's how I pre-trim before I glue up. So this is a razor blade. You'll probably see me do this an awful lot. I break the back off of this razor blade so that it will actually go flat. And then I'll put like a couple pieces of tape on the bottom of it. One to keep from scratching up the finish, but the other one is I'm shimming that cutting surface off the top by probably about 15 thousandths. And I'm going to trim that. My goal is to trim that, to have the spline in so that it's to the bottom, basically roughly to the bottom of the crack. And then I want to have like about 15 thousandths evenly over the top of the surface of the finish before I glue up. Why? I just feel like it works better that way. I haven't really taken a look at this with microscopes or anything, but I'll tell you my hypothesis here. I'm going to, well, we'll get to it in a little bit, but anyway, so this is this razor blade. I would go along the edge after I had it like down in there and everything. I would go along the edge of this like probably 15 times, just taking very, very minute little scoring cuts. And that's going to give me that 15 thousandths over the top of it, over the top of the finish. If you go and you're going to like take one pull of it, forget about it. You're going to grab the run out and you're going to do weird things to your spline. You need to be very careful at this point. This is another point where, boy, it can go bad. So this is what it looks like once it's peeled off. It's a little hard to see there, but there's probably just like, it's 15 thousandths above the surface. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to reach into the sound hole and I'm going to press that crack up from the inside and kind of wiggle it around in there. And it's going to spit a little bit of that top spline out. And then I'm going to take it with my tweezers and pull that out and set it very carefully aside because it's ready to go in to be glued up at this point. So that top spline right there, I would say is probably maybe 20 thousandths. It doesn't look like much now, but that was a big crack. I would not have been confident gluing that crack back together. So gluing it in, this is one, I don't have pictures of the inside of this, but so MDF and wax paper on the inside running the running the length of the crack. And then there's two scissor jacks in there pushing it up from the inside to make sure I've got something flat to press down from the outside from. Plexiglass is flat or whatever, but for whatever reason, if you clamp that in there without having that backer in there, it's going to like slightly deform it and you're going to get like you're going to get like an indented crack or something weird. Something's not going to go quite right. But so this is gluing it up. And if you can see, I've got quite a few of the cracks going along the length, or clamps going along the length of the crack. This is one way of doing it. So this, I would be hesitant to do this without those scissor jacks in there anyway too, because in order to put enough force on there, you'd probably break. I'm levering. Those scissor jacks are in there such that the clemsias on the back are meeting the scissor jacks. Like if you were to like put that much force on the back, you'd run the risk of cracking the back. So if you have any hesitation about this, I don't have like a lot of the super long clamps that will actually deliver a lot of force. So, but if you have nice big long clamps where you could go in there and hit that MDF and then clamp from the top and have the bottom of the clamp hit the MDF, it'd probably be just as good too, maybe even better. So I glue in with G-Flex epoxy. I know it's probably heresy in some guitar circles, but I like G-Flex. I have not had one problem since I switched to this. Um, my splines with tight bond will swell the joint, but it's so unpredictable. And when you're dealing with a small spline, boy, it's just so unpredictable how much swelling you're going to get. And I just had a lot of problems with tight bond. I mean, forget about hide glue. Like, it's just, personally, I forgot about hide glue. I think it has an ugly glue joint. I think uh, it has some issues with top splines. I'm not quite sure what, but I had a number of hide glue ones that spit my spline out. I'm not sure if that was the hide glue, or maybe I was a rookie hide glue user. I don't know, but I did not like introducing that much moisture to mine. So this is me. The other thing that's nice about the epoxy is it takes colorants really well. So this is one where I use some white pigment and then some, by the time I got done using yellow dye and tobacco brown dye, it was probably very close to what Jeff mixes up as vintage amber. And it makes for a very, very subtle glue line, I feel. Let's see here. There are limits with the colorants. Just like I was saying, I mean, don't go overboard thinking you're gonna, like, you know, color to the exact color of the top. It's the same thing I was saying about where, I could paint like a very, very, very convincing fraudulent spruce piece of spruce from one angle, and then it would look ridiculous another angle. Like, once again, this is like, don't think that you're gonna, I guess what I'm saying is, don't think that you're gonna have a large glue line. You're gonna pick up the slack with G-Flex, and then it's gonna look okay because you put color in it will look like a ridiculous painted bit of spruce. So G-Flex, like all stuff epoxy related, cleans up really nicely with naphtha. Just look for all those fingerprints, because you're going to be like, you're going to be gluing on a top spline, and you're going to be, cleaning and getting a little bit on your finger, and then just, you're going to be thinking about, God, I wish I was done with this project. And then you're going to set the guitar aside and come back the next day, and we'll have left G-Flex, nice yellow G-Flex fingerprints everywhere. So trimming it down. So this is, by now, probably everybody's seen this. The clear plexi with sandpaper on one side, so you can see what you're doing. This is another one of those things where keeping your touch up small. I mean, even if you miss it, you've got, you can say, hey, maybe this one didn't go so well, but I didn't make it bigger. And the next guy can really dial in the touch up. When I've been watching Iris's Facebook page and Instagram and stuff for quite a while. You know how many times she goes back and just leaves the guy's wood repair alone, and then just updates his touch up, like, a lot. Like, it's okay, like, just keep it small, like, and then whoever comes on behind you doesn't have to, like, deal with this catastrophe of things getting large. This technique, you can add tape to your plexi for outriggers, for depth stops. I have experimented with taking the Frank Ford tape on a razor blade technique to the next level, and actually ground a little micro scraper into a razor blade, and then tape depth gauged that. The micro scraper was the exact width of the spline. That worked okay. this this part right here, these days I go over into the original wood now, whereas I didn't before. I used to just like drop it straight down onto the spline between the glue joints. I go over just a little bit into the original wood now because it's the only way that I can reliably tell that I've got it at the same level as the original wood. Before, when I was just dropped, there was too much parallax with the finish and stuff. I was always either just like a little bit too low or a little bit too high. I found that when I sand over into the original wood, it also gives me a better indication of maybe I need to modify my bare wood just a little bit with some colorants. It also yeah, it just I have a lot less trouble with being a little proud or a little low on my splines. And nothing like there's a lot of things that give your splines away. Being proud of the surface, being below the surface are two of the biggest ones. Like those like really stand out. Even from the lay person. Get your color all you want. You know, if it's below, you know, proud or below the plane of the original wood, it's really gonna pop out. Any questions? I feel like that 5-hour energy's really got me talking. Yes, William.
Yeah, that was a good explanation on the flat top where you put the scissors in there to give it something, to clamp against.
Yeah.
What did you put inside the arch top?
I did. I'm gonna get to a mandocello that I did, but in the arch top, I put scissor jacks in there too. But I put like some rigid foam against the arch top, the top part of the jack to better conform to the arch of the arch top.
Oh, okay.
So now we're ready for painty. So I'm going to do a couple examples of painty. This first one, everybody is like, they seem to be like, when I do top spline on anything with a sunburst, they're like, oh my God, you got the sunburst. I'm like, you don't understand. Like as soon as there's color involved, it becomes easier. Bare spruce, forget about it. Like it's just super tough. When there's color, I get to use color. And then all of those things of adding color, like, yeah, you got to be careful, but you can play with the color of the spruce a little bit. You can kind of, use a little bit of color to maybe pick up the slack of a slight species mismatch or a slight UV mismatch or something like that. So this first one is an example of yellow, a Gibson that had the spruce dyed yellow, and then it had a shot sunburst over the top of it, kind of a reddish brown shot sunburst. So here is the spline in there, and this was me painting the yellow. So this is going back to kind of like everything that I've talked about in the moments leading up to this, which is I try to follow the finish schedule as close to how they did it as possible. I find that's like half of the battle of getting away from those weird refraction issues where, it looks great one way and then it looks like garbage another way. Like the closer I get to the original finish schedule, the better. Like if, like you're just not going to make wood that's been dyed yellow look the same with a sealer coat and then shot yellow over the top of that. It's just they're just two different animals. They look completely different, and they don't look completely different, but they look completely different when they're right next to each other and you're rolling it around in the light. That's when they look completely different. They look remarkably similar, to anybody that is only a casual observer, and they're, in separate rooms. So, and then this is me. This was a particularly spattery one. And so this is me starting up here, painting down, getting a little bit redder, adding a little bit of spatter. This looks a little rough in here. I might have gone back, and then getting dark down into here. Halfway decent fade, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would have given, I think I was about a 7 away from hanging myself in the spray booth. So this is all right. So this is one where we're talking about dye to strictly colored dye to bare wood. This, can everybody see the difference between these two, other than just the color? But you can see that this is like, it's a little hard to see here, but this fade right here, that's just 100% colorant sitting on top of sealed wood. It's not splotchy. It's not, it's a little bit different color than the next one. But can everybody see like how splotchy it is? It's just splotchy. It looks like the dye is in the wood. Anyway, those are things to look at. You gotta you gotta be able to determine those things, because it's gonna be, the make or break on something that's halfway decent to something that's, pretty good. Mostly it's gonna save you from things being real tragic. It's really hard to, the next step is determining whether or not something was, done with pigment or dye. A lot of sunbursts are difficult to tell because, sometimes they use dye. It makes a lot of sense on an opaque part of a sunburst to use pigment, but a lot of times they didn't do it. And if you use pigment, it's going to look funny. So this is dye to bare wood. It's very difficult to gauge what it's going to look like once it's got lacquer on it. I would say when you're going dye to bare wood, so it is possible to pull dye back out of bare wood. Boric acid, the 2-part wood bleach, those will all reliably pull dye back out of wood. On spruce, boy, be careful. Like it has a reaction with spruce that I think makes the wood less stable. So it's better to do what I do on most of these, which is to take a really educated guess and get it a lot of the way there. And then if you have to go light, a little light, and then adjust your color a little bit after you seal it. And it won't be like dimed out, like 100% going after the original finish schedule. And you may have some weird refraction issues or whatever, but like going super dark, dye into the bare wood, very hard to come back from that if you go too dark. So, the other thing too is try to stay off the glue line as much as possible. Like a lot of the glue lines will get dark for whatever reason. If I don't know if they're like hydrophilic or philic or something, but they something about it tends to suck up stain and stuff right next to the glue line.
So are you doing this color with an artist brush or the airbrush?
This is all with artist brush in here. I used to tape off and try to go after it with the airbrush. Once again, I hate putting tape on guitars now. I've just had too many tape related tragedies. The other thing too is I can't tell what I'm doing with the airbrush, and I always go too dark, or then I go too light, and I'm constantly putting tape on and off. Like for me on these things, it's just easier for me to sit there with my paintbrush and go at it. So the other thing too is like, you couldn't really see it on the previous one, but that shot burst was really dirty. It had a lot of those speckle pebbles in them, and it's very hard to recreate that with the airbrush. You pretty much have to recreate that with the with a paintbrush if you want those little dots of dirty sunbursts. Does everybody know why dirty sunbursts happen? So if somebody comes by and they shoot a banding pass on their sunburst, they go around the outside of it, and they come back and they do it immediately. They do a second one and shoot over the top of wet lacquer. It gives the overspray something to stick to, and it creates this little ball of color. And then all of a sudden there's like this new thing, this three-dimensional object for the rest of your atomized color lacquer to stick to, and it just keeps building up and building up and building up, and then you've got these little shitty dots of color in your fade instead of having a nice even fade. All right, so this is what this turned out like on a scale of 1 to 10. I was really happy with this. I'd put this at a 9, and it's an indication of not so much my skill, but of all the things going right, which is that dye to bare wood just made it infinitely easier. I had to be subtle, and I had to sneak up on the color, and I had to, yada yada yada. But I knew going into this that this was going to be a winner, just because I'd done these things before. There's color in the wood. It's normalizing. There's splotchiness everywhere. Like it had all the things going for it to make me look like a genius, when really I was just, playing the ball where it lied, and it worked out. Less is more. This is an example of that one that from before. This is just a piece of spruce down a crack, and I put clear lacquer over it. It's got none of the razor in there. It's got no grain line. It's just a piece of spruce down a crack with a decent glue joint. Out the door, it's repaired. It's not coming back. That guitar is in its natural state. It's ready to go. It's a repair. This is a guitar repair. This was on a Santa Cruz, totally serviceable. So what I probably would have done in the old days is go, that was pretty good, let's make it better, and start painting and painting and painting and painting and painting, and then where would I have gotten to with all that painting? Probably nowhere good. And I probably made money on this one. So there. So I threw this one in here just to kind of show you some strategies for doing this. This was on an old Gibson, I think H Mandocello. So these were some, I don't think I had the scissor jacks. I don't think they would have fit in that sound hole. So I made these custom brace jacks out of foam and tape, and some thick veneer, maple veneer up here. And that's what they look like on the inside. Just something to give some pressure back up against the bottom, so that when I was poking down from the top, it had something to resist against it. So this is an example of kind of knowing the finish schedule. Boy, it's alcohol dye to bare wood on these old Gibsons, and it, like I went in with dye and I recreated some of these flecks. It came out reasonably well. This was, it's maybe a little dark on just on that angle. But, with a little bit of fleck and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, it came out all right. Probably this is one of those repairs that after a lot of that darkness is from having fresh top coat on it. It's probably going to mellow out over time. I would think that repair would look quite a bit better today. All right, so that is the end of the verbal presentation. Any questions about any of that? Anybody want to push back on any of my notions about letting guitars exist in their relaxed state with their cracks or whatever? I'm all ears on that stuff. If you think I'm giving people bad advice, I'm all for hearing the countervailing opinions. Anybody? No? All right. So
I got a question.
yes, who
I
said
got a
that?
question. Paul.
Paul.
Hi. On the Gibson Mandocello, did you spray finish or was that just touch up with the paintbrushes?
That was touch up with the paintbrushes. And then I think I went back over the crack, probably with some brushed on shellac. Those teens Gibsons are super thin finishes. Like it doesn't take much to put an appropriate amount of shiny on the top of it and have it look halfway serious.
Mm-hmm.
It's super difficult to make those. What's the I don't know. It's not super difficult, like I've put lacquer on those sometimes, in thin amounts. Maybe I sprayed like a little bit of lacquer over that, on small touch-ups like that, even though you may be like finish mismatch or whatever, or like material mismatch, like as long as you nail the sheen, you're going in the right direction, like especially on something narrow like a top spline. But I probably finish it off with some shellac though. It's hard to beat the look of shiny shellac.
Mm-hmm. How do you apply that when you're putting it over a crack like that? Would you just brush it on again?
Probably brush. Yeah. One of the things about the brush that I notice is I get like that, like if I take it and I'm like really like brushing it on, like if that was a top spline, I'm really steady with my my hand and I'm just brushing on that crack, like you'll get like that ribbed look where the finish is like
As a ridge is...
yeah, where it's like cured back into the early wood and the late wood differently. Like you'll get that look by using a brush, as long as you're like really like getting one nice big stroke on there. So any other questions before I head down to the shop?
Yeah, I got a G-Flex question for you. I never used that before. So when you say it cleans up with naphtha, is that only when it's wet, or does it do that after it's dry also?
That's a good question. It's only when it's wet, only when it's open. So by the way, G-Flex, in my estimation, is a dynamite. Just if you're going to glue a crack too, it's a dynamite crack glue. It's so good for that. And I've had 2 instances now where I've glued cracks with G-Flex, and somebody's brought it back to me because it cracked again. And the original crack was 100% solid, and there was a tiny crack right next to the original crack, which is like very, very handy when you're in a negotiating pickle with the customer and they're like, your repair failed, and then you can pull out the magnifying glass and go, no, actually my repair is solid. It's, you got your guitar dry again. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Ian, got a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's say at the crack, you got one level higher than another.
Mhm.
Maybe you're fixing up in an old repair or something like that. Do you do anything to level it up, or is that all going to be leveled up when you clamp everything together?
I hope it's going to be leveled up when it's all clamped together. I will say, and I didn't include this in here because I didn't have any good pictures of it, but I have on ones where you'll get them where like it'll like kind of like they'll be going different directions or whatever, and they'll be like kind of like a wow on one side or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and I think I did this on one of the arch tops that I did a spline on, but I actually tack welded the crack with G-Flex first. I went in, I put like a few little dots and then got it all into place and let it set, and then went and fit my spline in. I think you could do something similar with cleats. You know, like some people will cleat it. I hate cleaning up. I hate cleaning up cleats. Like but it would probably work too.
Yeah. So you're basically saying is that once it's splined, it doesn't need the cleat?
Yeah, I've never cleated them after splining them. I think some people do. I don't know. I don't care for cleats too much. That's one of the reasons why I spline. I think, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, any other questions? Then we'll go down upstairs and we'll start working on our boards. No? Okay. I'm gonna head downstairs.
I just made a tool to clean old cleats off the bottom of guitars here, but I was having a hard time getting some cleats out. So it's just a piece of, it's a putty knife cut off, and I sharpened it and glued a little handle on it, and I could just ride it along the top underneath blind and feel pretty well, because it beats the razor blade that I was using just moments before this thing. And the chisel kind of turned up in there, and working the back edge of it across the top was no fun.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it worked pretty well. It could be sharper, but I could sharpen it. So.
I got a slight variation I made that's more like a chisel, but I get O1 tool steel. I make a lot of my own chisels, but just like yours, like a bigger, flatter area to register on the top. But that fits nicely, and you hook your finger and pull it. Same idea, sharpen underneath. But I like yours even wider, so less chance of digging in.
Yeah, and it's small too. I've got something like that, but this could fit in, in between your tone bars and stuff in there, which was handy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get clunked around with mine. It's like that. Use that to pull bridge plates, huh?
Okay. So if you got your pieces of spruce, you want to do this, we're going to prep these boards, and I'm also going to like proselytize one more time what I proselytized to Michael Bashkin during the Luth Along, which is hand rubbed seal coats. So we're gonna do two sides of this just for fun. I'm gonna prep this out like I was like prepping out for finish, which would be 220 grit, and then I'd be going with the grain. This would be my last thing. This would be bare wood with the grain, lifting it, not going like this, because you're gonna get lateral stuff, like back and forth, lift, back and forth, lift, back and forth, lift. Do that to both sides. And then I'm going to use this spray shellac as my sealer. When I'm putting this on, like I'm actually like really pressing into that. That's the key to this. Really pressing into that. I can feel that is nice and flat now. Now on the opposite side, do the same thing with your sanding. And then take whatever your normal shot sealer is, whether or not you use vinyl wash coat or you do just like a layer of lacquer or something. Instead of hand rubbing it on, actually spray it on and then feel the difference. One side feels flat, nice and flat. The other one feels like it has raised grain that needs to be sanded back. And if you keep spraying on that, and spraying on it and spraying on it, eventually it will fill, but you're going to go through a lot more lacquer, and you're also going to have more issues when you sand out, that you're going to have like burn through areas. Like this side that I hand rubbed that on is going to take lacquer so fast. All of those next coats for build are going to like build almost immediately over the top of the surface rather than sucking into that open porous area. So then the next thing is to go through a regular finish schedule on this. I made just this goofy little stick with a dowel with a slit cut into it. But so this is going to be, for me, this was the StewMac rattle can gloss. 3 heavy sprays. Okay. So 1 heavy spray, go outside, smoke a cigarette, come back in. My judgment for whether or not something's ready to spray again is, do I see any of the sanding marks in it yet? I put lacquer on thick enough to where I can't see any of the sanding marks. And when I come back and I see sanding marks, I'm relatively confident that I'm ready to shoot again. So come back in, put another big heavy coat on it, go back out, do something else, maybe tend to your zucchinis, if that's what you're into. And then come back and shoot your third one. Then we're gonna let that sit for a day. And then the first one, if you're doing nitro and you're doing this exactly how I'm doing it, don't sand it. Just hit it with some red Scotch-Brite and then shoot your second day of spray. That's after letting it sit for a day. And the Scotch-Brite, you can just kind of like give it a nice big scuff. Just kind of like around like that. Oh, hold on, camera. Around like that. So then we're shooting our second day, do the same thing. 3 hog-on days or 3 hog-on coats, hog it on, go out, check the mail, come back, see if it's ready to shoot it. Another big hog on, go out, take the dog for a walk, come back, get 3 big hog-on coats on there. Then let it sit for another day. Then you're ready to actually apply some sandpaper to it. Then my thing was to get 220 grit sticky on the sandpaper, and then I'm leveling it. I'm leveling all of that stuff in, and I'm getting it very close to 100% flat with no little shinies in it. And then I'm ready for my last day, which is going to be another big 3 everlasting gobstoppers of heap and finish on there, as thick as you can get without running. Same thing I was saying before. Hog it on there, go do something else, come back, see if you see your sanding marks in it. Hog it on there again, go do something else, come back. 3 big hogging. So we're putting 9 coats total over 3 days, separated by 2 days of gas off, 2 days of cure. Let that sit for about a week. And then buff it out. This is that piece that's shiny. Oh, we're now ready for the moment of truth. We're gonna make our spline work board. I haven't done this yet. This is gonna be really interesting to see if this works. So we're gonna give it karate, like so. If you feel like you need a chop, give it a chop. Here's our nice crack. I peeled 2 like little guys off of this. Thusly, I basically took my big straight edge. I took my X-Acto knife. Let's see. I just, basically cut along that. I got something about like yo. Can everybody see what that is? It's a piece of the spruce cut off to the side. We didn't decide how big we want our top splines to be when we fit them. So I want it to be about 20 thousandths. Seems pretty close. All right, so this I did with, I'm doing with MDF. I'll drive a couple nails here. I'm giving it just like a little bit of pulling up on it in the center, just a little bit. Oh, hold on. I did this wrong. Space from there. I'm giving that just a little bit of work to do there in the thing, putting a line on there. Relatively the same. Other nails in there. Some wax stick for down. Anybody unclear on what I'm doing here?
Making a gap in the middle.
That's right. It's gonna be a little tricky. Just so you know, this is my wife's weight. I have a much more masculine weight that I work out with. I don't know if I need to be like super clear about that or not. But that, just so we're looking at this here. Everybody see what we're doing there? Real clear? There's a gap. All right. Who feels like this is beyond their ability to manufacture this this thing? Nobody? Oh, that's good. All right, I'm gonna go back upstairs. I'll be right back. All right. How we feeling, everybody?
Look good.
Okay.
I like that method.
All right. By the way, that's like an old school way of joining tops too. If anybody's looking to join tops on the cheap, I'm not saying it's the best way. Those guys with their fancy ropes and their wedges, boy, that looks pretty serious. Any questions? Any questions about what we're doing here? Anybody want to rebut anybody like sticking guitars in garbage bags? Want to defend the virtue of bagging guitars? I'm all ears on that.
Done that, but I think I like your idea better.
Well, get through a couple of those soul crippling top splines first, and then we'll see.
Hey, if all else fails, use Gorilla Glue.
Well, there you go. Perfectly reasonable. You heard it here. Anybody?
Oh yeah, I got one.
Yes, sir.
When you were adding the color in a burst, you said you pretty much just stay a little shy of the background top wood color, and because you're going to add some sealer, and that'll darken it up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And then you add in the burst colors.
No, so the one that I was saying, keep it light and then bring it up. That was the dye to bare wood burst. And basically what's happening there is
Okay.
you can't see what color you're going to get until you put a clear coat on it. So that dye is in there. It's looking very light. As soon as you put like some lacquer to that bare wood, it'll reveal what color it's actually going to be. And so that's the one where, like, if you go too dark, there's no dialing it back. But if you leave it like a little bit light, you can usually, without too much penalty, you can bring that color a little bit darker with it. So, but anyway, well, guys and gals, I think that's.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
I didn't hear a lot of discussion about donor wood selection, grain orientation, and that stuff.
Yeah, I think.
Or did I stop paying attention?
No, I didn't. I didn't talk about it too much. You know, I work with such a limited wood selection that it's not like something that's really been on my radar. I know, like, you know, like if you can get something with the rays that are just right, that's certainly a benefit. Like, but like my top splines are going to be in terms of wood selection are usually going to be pretty utilitarian. I'm not going to go through endless amounts of wood to get the right run out. I'm definitely, like, if I got like a top with like a lot of run out, I might. I'm definitely going to make sure that my run outs go in the right direction. If I've got a top with run out and I've selected a piece of donor spruce with run out, I'm going to make sure it's going in the right direction. but yeah, I don't know what to say about those like super duper like hard flash and run out guitars. Like I just don't think there's any winning with that. And for me, like on that Santa Cruz top spline, like it just had to be utilitarian at the end of the day. Like I just couldn't. I'm not. I can't figure out how to really make those invisible. But did you have something you wanted to add on that stuff, Doug?
Well, no, I was just curious about, your approach to that, because when I'm doing the spline, I'll spend what feels like endless amounts of time in my wood selection first. And usually when I do, that's when I'm glad I did, because, I've got a fair amount of stuff to choose from and pull from. But I'll go through making splines and getting all the way down to gluing them in, and then just throw it in the trash and grab another piece of wood if I'm not liking the way it looks in terms of grain orientation, how much reflection versus dark I get, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think the difference in when you're moving around that guitar, or when you're walking around the guitar, if your run out isn't, well, God forbid your run out's running in the wrong direction, but if your run out is steep versus not so steep, you'll get a much more satisfactory look, especially as you're moving around the guitar. If you try to go steeper, if it's steep, and not if it's not.
Yeah, I don't have that much wood to select from. I do get particular about the species. I get particular about the right look. Honestly, I haven't touched a guitar with crazy run out in a long time though. I don't know if that's luck. Maybe. Or what. But the other thing too is like on a lot of like the high run out guitars, like they're like, like a lot of times there's 70s Martins and stuff like that, where it's like, it's just they need to work again. But I'd be interested in hearing more, more information on that for sure. And maybe we could talk about that and put together a little snippet on that. But it's not something I've thought about in a long time. I know back when I was at Groans, I did a bunch of maple work where I spent a lot of time looking at wood. I don't know if you watched the thing with Iris, but she was talking about they handle this. They don't really do splines, but did you see the thing she did where she was took the gouge and then gouged between the two grain lines? Yeah, she was talking about like fitting and gluing in and rejecting two pieces of spruce before she got the one piece that she wanted. But that was on a $60,000 repair bill too. So
then it's worth it.
I think so. I think so. I mean, I would certainly like, the thing is it's worth it because she's like Watsky. She just keeps track of her time and then just submits a bill. I mean, she's just a mercenary like that. So like, of course it's going to be worth it because it is whatever it is when she gets done with it. So, but for me, I mean, I don't feel like I'm given that kind of latitude to try a bunch of things, like especially like, I mean, if I put a piece of wood in and I don't like it, especially on like a small one, like a 15,000 spline or something like that, and I don't like that, like taking those back out that's a tremendous amount of time to do it well and not to
make it bigger.
You're going to make it bigger. Yeah. Like I think on a lot of this stuff, I feel like I've I don't know, Doug. I feel like I've given up. You know, like I feel like these are guitars, and like my A game is is what it is, and but yeah, I think there's something to it though. I think there's something to it, and I don't want to say you should, like I don't want to tell young people, oh yeah, like looking through stacks of wood to get the right top spline thing. That's hooey. I wouldn't say that at all. It's just not something I've thought about for a while because yeah, I've given up. So what was, you had one other thing that you wanted to throw in there?
No, that was it. I was just curious about your selection of donor wood.
Yeah. I mean, how many good top splines have you seen come through the shop that you didn't do, Doug? Like I've only ever seen bad ones.
Yeah, most of them are bad. I had one right at the end of last year that was on a classical guitar that I think I posted about. That was the third. I was the third person in line on that one. But it's I don't think that splines are ever really meant in the guitar world to be, especially top splines, are really ever meant to be a cosmetically invisible repair. It's not. I don't think it should be sold as such, because unless you're doing some super fancy footwork, I've done some where I've cut 3 or 4 and had to cut 3 or 4 grain lines apart to kind of inlay a section into the top, but then you're basically talking about floorboards.
Yeah. I think that the thing about it not being sold is something that's going to be cosmetically invisible, I think is right on the money. Because like when I was working for Buzz, like everybody's got this great imagination about what is possible. And Buzz would I'd get done with a top spline and he'd be like, well, what about like, I heard that a guy could do it this way. I was like, Buzz, you've been working in guitar stores your entire life. How many good top splines have you actually seen? Well, now you mention it, like, I'm like, I don't think those, of course it's impossible to say, maybe we just didn't notice the invisible ones, right? Like that's but I don't think so, because I think if anybody I knew, and I know some crafty dudes, if any of those guys had been able to pull off a near invisible top spline, the first thing I'd be doing is looking at their pictures, cursing them out, like
the first thing you'd be doing is showing them to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yes, top splines as a structural thing they can look like good repairs. You can have a good tight joint and a good, like this is, like I was saying, this is where this guitar is decided to be. This is how we're going to make sure that we aren't, like constantly repeating this procedure of fixing this crack, or maybe it opened up into something that's just too big to close up, but they can be good looking repairs, and it can be totally fine for them to be noticeable as good solid repairs. So
yeah, I have a D'Angelico that a friend of mine on the Cape. He's no longer with us, but he did some top splines for me over there, and it was real ugly before, and of course I picked it up for a song, but this guy also, he was one of the early Martin authorized repairmen, and did violins and basses and all sorts of stuff. And he did top splines on this that you can't see.
Really? Well, I'm all ears. Now, the other thing too, like if you do a top split, if you strip the finish and you do it and you're in it for a refin, that's a little bit different. But yeah, I'm all ears on top splines that you can't see.
Hey, Ian.
Yes, sir.
So I've been really, really interested in Hugh's method of using the milling machine for top splines.
Yes.
And obviously that wouldn't be for every job, but do you have any issues with that, like philosophically, seeing as though you remove a little bit more wood than you probably would under normal circumstances?
I don't I don't know, like if he's got like on a lot of them, he's dealing with like super straight grain Martin tops. So I don't know that he's going to have like a really wavy line that he's got to like, chuck up a ginormous bit to pick up the slack for that wavy line. Like, I think he was talking to me about using like a 20 thousandths end mill on that and stuff like that. So if you can get, if you can get a 20 thousandths end mill on one straight cut from the bridge down to the tail block, boy, that's going to be one easy to fit spline. And that's what he's talking about too. Is he's talking about neither fuss nor muss, like just like straight up cutting that channel and then throwing in a piece of spruce that's the right size, and it's just done, and it's tight. So it's something to think about. But as I told you, I was like, this job is too stupid to require a milling machine for every job, No disrespect, James Rodman. I know you got two of them or three of them. How many milling machines do you have, James?
Two decent sized ones. If you have a hammer, everything's a nail.
So Hugh chucks his up into the mill with his neck jig. That's what he says he uses the neck jig for most, is putting guitars in the milling machine.
I almost wonder if you couldn't make that happen reasonably with like a saddle routing jig.
I've thought about that for years. Boy, that's the saddle slot routing jig barely routes a straight line in the saddle slot. So I'm not sure how it's gonna, like something like that though. Yeah, you could do it. Is Mark on here? Jam Jar Mark, are you on here? Mark, Mark put top splines, or not top splines. He put splines in a neck with his CNC machine, and I'm gonna get him on here, and he's got like one of those aluminum extrusion CNC machines, and we're gonna get him on here to show how to use one of those as a milling machine. That, I think, if you got proper hold downs for a guitar body and one of those, I think that could be a good alternative to a milling machine. Because a milling machine that you can put a guitar into, that's a lot of real estate. You're not going to do that with like one of those Harbor Freight jobbies. So, any other questions? Going once.
Yeah. Are we gonna do a sunburst? One of these?
Yeah, we're gonna do that on Maple. So a few Din Kings from now, Chris Jacoby's going to come on. We're going to talk about chalk fitting, and we're going to do a sunburst. We're going to do a scoopy in the middle of a Les Paul style sunburst, and cool. See who's who and who's what and what's who and why is where and all that kind of stuff. So, but
Ian,
yes, sir.
I have a question.
Dan Earlywine, you have a question?
How often on your top spline work over the years and now do you use the airbrush?
I use the airbrush to put clear on, but almost never to put color on, because you do have to tape off. And it always, like, there's the other thing too, is there's always like weird surface tension issues where the edge of the lacquer is too. Like it always wants to like kind of wick up to the edges just a little bit. I don't know. I'm just used to doing it with a paintbrush. But I to Doug's point, like on the wood stuff, like if it is bare spruce, you're better off spending your time looking through a pile of wood than you are thinking you're going to paint something. Like for me in bare spruce, I've just given up. Whatever, like I do some looking at wood. I'm not gonna like totally front, but I'm just not gonna try to paint one species to another. I'm not gonna try to like, maybe I'll try to give it a little bit of color if I think I can modify the oxidation look a little bit, but very rarely, Dan, do I press the airbrush into service on top splines.
Even for clear.
No, for clear, yeah. I put it on. I put my clear on with the airbrush. So maybe if I painted and I needed just and I'd already built up some finish, and I needed just a brief pass of something, maybe if maybe I'd painted and maybe it was just a whisk or two red, and I wanted to add some green to knock the red back, I might mask it off and just do a light wisping pass of green. That might come up from time to time.
So if you're finishing over a top spline to put clear, once you've got it looking the way you want it, you add some finish back to the top of it.
Yep.
That's with an airbrush.
Yep.
Taped off.
No. Free.
Straight out.
Free. Yep. Free. Same rules apply to this as every other touch up, which is that I've already pre-nuked the area with some retarder to get it hot and get it ready for the new lacquer.
But we're talking small amounts with an airbrush.
Yep.
Tiny spraying.
Tiny spraying. Little guys. Yeah, I don't like a lot of overspray. I don't like to paint outside the lines too much on it. Once again, even a lot of clear, even if it's a big band of new clear over, because all that stuff, if you've got lacquer that's cured out and you've got the nice ridgy lacquer, and then you've got this big flat spot of lacquer, that can look pretty bad too, to me. Maybe I'm just being a nerd, but keeping the afflicted area as small as possible, I think is always the move. So, by the way, Tyler, Hugh doesn't send me any pictures of his top splines, so you may want to see those you may want to reach out to him and see him first before you decide to go through all the trouble of putting them into the milling machine.
I'll bug him about it.
Yeah. Have you reached out to him? Do you have his stuff?
I never have. No, never talked to you.
I'll introduce you guys. All right. Any more questions? Penachars, you all learned up. You don't have no questions. Are you guys going to be making up your boards?
Yeah, I just ordered some.
Okay, cool.
So I'll try and get some finish on one this week and make one up.
All right, cool. Well, everybody.
Are you gonna?
Yeah,
oh, sorry. Yeah. You gonna post this on? I missed the first part.
Yeah, we'll get it all up there.
Cool.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for dinking, and we'll see you. Let's see. So, this Wednesday we got Luthalong. Doug is gonna do round 2 of the neck jig. I just was up at his shop and I saw a really cool apparati for simulating twist that he's got on his, and we're gonna go over kind of some what would you call it, Doug? Worst case scenarios or something, or?
Yeah, I think what we're gonna want to do is just some tricks to use the jig to solve some problems on troublesome necks. So it'll be some neck jig, stupid pet tricks kind of thing.
All right. That sounds awesome. And like I was saying, anybody, if I know it's kind of lame to push back when it's live, but if you have any pushback on anything I said, feel free to hit me in the DMs and we can talk about stuff. So anyway, y'all have a good rest of your weekend.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.